Welcome back everyone to the Racing Reviews podcast, episode number 2, and in today's episode we're going to be breaking down all of the juicy details from last weekend's Bahrain Grand Prix, have a little talk about the championship fight ahead in 2021, Yuki Tsunoda, the rising Japanese star, and I also want to talk about Sebastian Vettel and his initial struggles at Aston Martin in race 1 of the season. We've also got a few extra goodies sprinkled throughout today's episode, including the brand new Visor Down quiz, where each of our guests will be pitted against each other in a helmet-themed extravaganza of a quiz. That'll be about halfway through today's episode, once we've got through some of our main talking points, and it should be a lot of fun. Feel free to play along in the comment section down below. But before we jump into our talking points, before we meet today's guest, I want to say a huge thank you once again to our sponsor for today's episode, Pit Lane Prints. A sponsor I picked myself because of the awesome artwork they produce from the world of Formula 1. Helmet designs, car designs, circuit designs, they've got it all in a range of sizes. We've also now got a few 2021 helmet designs sprinkling their way through. Danny Rick's awesome, I love this design so much. His 2021 helmet is available. I've got it up on my wall at the moment. We've also got Lewis Hamilton's 2020 design accompanying today's podcast. That's in the top left hand corner of your screen, and of course links will always be in the description down below if you want to pick up any print as and when. Thank you very much, Pit Lane Prints, for sponsoring today's podcast. And with all of that goodness out of the way, I think it's about time we introduced our first guest on the Racing Reviews podcast, and to kick things off in style, we have today professional memester, former Mark Webber fanboy, and Formula 1 YouTuber with over 20,000 subscribers. It is none other than Will from FP1. Will, thank you so much, dude, for joining me this afternoon. Hope you're well. But I want to start off by asking you, how much did you enjoy last week's race? Because for me, what a banger. What a start to the 2021 season.
Oh, it was phenomenal. Like Bahrain, it usually gets up an interesting race. It's never usually a absolute banger that we think back of in years to come. But this one, it's up there for me already, ahead of a lot of the races that we saw in 2020. And 2020 was a brilliant season, with the likes of Turkey, the likes of Mugello, the likes of Monza. But I said this when I was talking about it in a podcast after the race, but I don't mind if Merc win like that. That was okay for me, because Hamilton had to fight for it. You could see on Hamilton's face he was physically tired and physically strained, and it was great. It showed he had to actually work for it this time round, and more of the same.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with that. I think the fight at the front, fantastic, but the fight through the midfield as well, just everywhere we seem to look in that race, there seemed to be something going on. And whilst, again, the focus will definitely be on Red Bull and Mercedes, and I definitely want to get onto that in a moment's time, but seeing the likes of McLaren, Aston Martin, Alpine, we had Tsunoda. I want to talk about him a little bit later on with AlphaTauri. Gasly was in the mix as well in qualifying. So many stories. Ferrari were back. It was an awesome start to the season. But you mentioned Lewis, and that's exactly where I want to start, because the focus throughout winter testing, and I know I, for one, I'm sure you're the same, I always read too much into testing. I probably shouldn't, but I definitely do. And I definitely thought going into this weekend, it was going to be Max Verstappen. It was going to be the Max show. And in practice, that's what we saw. Fastest in FP1, FP2 and FP3, qualifying pole position. And I kind of just assumed he would run away with it. How do you feel, not only that Lewis Hamilton won, but in a whole season context, how do you feel Mercedes are going to be able to challenge Red Bull for 23 races? Because yes, this weekend we saw the brilliance of a 7-time world champion, but over the course of a full season, are Red Bull going to be that dominant, or do we expect Mercedes to bounce back at circuits that probably suit their car a little bit more?
Well, I mean, firstly, you obviously said that you were almost expecting Verstappen to come out on top. I was the opposite. Every
wow.
single year we're going around saying, oh yeah, look, Ferrari are faster, Merc are finally going to, and then every single year Merc come out to the first race and they're 3 seconds quicker than everybody else. And you're like, oh, okay, never mind then. So I was kind of expecting it to be more of the same this year. And we come through and there's Verstappen comes into the paddock all macho, oh, look at me, I'm going to take the fight to Lewis. And then come the end of the weekend, it was like, oh well, we were another 5/10 off the pace, but no, we weren't this weekend, and it was just such a nice, refreshing change. As for the season fight, I think it's going to be very track dependent. I know Mercedes have already said that they are worried about Imola and they're worried about Portimao as well. So I expect Red Bull maybe to have the edge on them, but Mercedes. It's not like this is the first time they've had challenges from other teams. Look at Ferrari in 17 and 18, for instance. And sort of 19, barring the fact that their engine was very slightly illegal. But they have experience with this now. And if anything, it puts Merc in quite a good position because they had sort of weak attempts to challenge them before. So they have this experience of fighting with another team. Now they've got to put everything they've learned from Ferrari to the test with Red Bull. And you know what? I think this is something that a lot of people aren't talking about. The midfield teams will be loving this because right now we've got a new regulation set coming in for 2022. You've got, presumably Mercedes and Red Bull who want to shift focus onto those regulations, but at the same time they're in a title fight. Red Bull are with Honda, and they want to send Honda out on a high. They haven't won a championship since 2013. They're going to want to develop their car. Mercedes is going to want to develop their car further into the season. And that's not going to help them next year because the rules are completely reset. And they're looking at a completely different philosophy of generating downforce on the car. So this provides a massive opportunity for the midfield teams, especially those that haven't got off on the strongest of feet, like Alpine or Aston Martin, for instance. They have a real opportunity to really close in that gap. They have more wind tunnel time testing on the car anyway, with the start of the cost cap coming in now. I think we're almost focusing on the wrong group of people in a sense, and I think looking to the long term, it's going to make F1 even more exciting in the future. Yeah,
well, I suppose on that note then, do you think this year's championship will come down to which team decides to move focus to 2022 first?
Oh, 100%. I think the team that win the championship this year will lose the championship in 2022.
Wow.
So if Red Bull get it this year, Merc will get it the year after, and vice versa. It's really, because Merc are usually in a position where they're clearly the fastest team. There's not the only reason Red Bull have challenged late into the season is because Merc stopped developing their car so early on. Now they're forced not to do that because Red Bull have finally come out the gates with a strong car and a strong driver pairing. Sorry, Albon stands, but I've got to put it out there. But Red Bull are in the best position they've been in for years, probably since the Ricciardo Verstappen era. And that was when they were still dealing with that dog of a Renault engine. So they've got everything coming together now. They've got Perez in that second car. They've got a strong Honda engine. They've got security in the future of Formula One. So, yeah, I completely agree. It's going to be whoever blinks first will possibly give up this year's championship, but put themselves in a much better position for 2022.
It wouldn't surprise me if we got maybe to the summer break and they were still battling, trying to work out who was going to be on top, and then maybe one of them bites the bullet. I still have no idea which one it's going to be, and I think even by the time, I think the fifth race of this year's Monaco, isn't it? And whilst I expect that Red Bull car to really be challenging there, I don't think we'll truly understand who's got the best car and who's going to be in a situation to win the championship. But one thing I think is going to be a major factor this year is the role that second driver is going to play this year. Because yes, in 2017 and 18, wasn't it? The battle with Ferrari and Mercedes had to look after Lewis. And already we saw Valtteri James, the meme that was born that season, start to come into play. And I wonder, this Valtteri Bottas narrative we see every single year, Bottas 2.0, Bottas 10.0, Bottas, I don't know, 1,000,000.0 we seem to be at this stage. Can he finally reach that level of consistency he's been aiming for? We've been told about for all these years. Or, because of this championship, are we going to see Mercedes in a very difficult position and having to do more Valtteri James? And with Red Bull, Sergio Perez, I don't want to be too harsh on him and say he's going to be a wingman, because in all reality, we've seen him for one race at Red Bull so far. And I know you just mentioned Alex Albon, and I think we can both agree Perez is going to be closer than Albon was. So how do you feel that's going to play a part in the championship? Is it very much Hamilton versus Lewis for you? Because I know that's what it is for me at the moment.
Hamilton versus Lewis? Do you mean Hamilton versus Verstappen?
Yes, that's the one. Oh my God, yes.
No, I mean that'd be Hamilton versus the inner battle of Lewis Hamilton. That'd be great. Get to Hamilton's in Mercedes.
That. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Cheers, mate.
But sorry, it's fine. I was commentating the race and said we're coming round the high-speed hairpin of Turn 1 in Spain the other day, so it's absolutely fine. I've made the same mistake. But where was I? Yeah, Perez and Bottas. Well, I mean, my views on Bottas are fairly well known, I think, in that I think he just needs to move aside for the likes of George at this point. Merck are running a real risk of not having George be able to learn under Lewis properly at Mercedes, because George at the moment appears to be the future of that team. You've got Vesti come at the ranks, but he won't be ready for a good few years yet. Merck in general have got their junior talent to Formula 1, but none have actually made it into the top team yet. And Bottas, I think Merck made a massive mistake in signing Bottas up for 2021 so early on in 2020, because he won the first race, good on him, and we were like, Bottas 70.0, maybe he's actually got it, and then 3 races later he was behind again. It's such a tough one. Perez, on the other hand, is a real enigma to me. I think, I mean, I made a joke about it at the time, but I tell you what, Alex Albon must have fallen off his chair in tears laughing when he saw him go out of Q2. I mean, I think we were all sat here saying, hang on a second, Perez has now gone out. What is wrong with the second Red Bull car? But he did come back in the race, and I think we're still too early in the season to really... I mean, Bottas, we've seen it year after year after year. We're not expecting much, but Perez, it's... I don't know where I sit on him yet. I think he really has... Is he up to pace with Verstappen? Not yet. Could he be? Probably not, but you never know. On a good weekend, if Verstappen, has the luck that he had in 2020, I think Perez is more in a position to pick up the pieces. And if he has a strong qualifying, which is why I'm kind of... I feel like Red Bull probably didn't put on the right strategy, chucking him out in the mediums. It was too much of a risk. They were too cocky in that sense, given where their pace was. If we see Perez in a normal weekend with any issues like that, we saw how he cut his way through the field in the race on Sunday. I think I would be surprised if we get to the end of the year and Perez hasn't won a race. I think he will have done. I think it might take a bit of bad luck for Max, but I think he can definitely do it. Bottas, on the other hand, I feel like even if Max and Lewis have an issue, I don't think he's going to be closer to pick up the pieces. I really don't. One thing I was thinking about watching the race on Sunday was, well, hang on a second, what happens if Bottas and Verstappen collide? And really, I'm looking at it and saying, one of them could get damaged and they could probably pit and still get ahead of Bottas. He's that far back at this point. So, yeah, to sum up that little ramble, Perez is an enigma to me. Bottas, get lost, basically.
I know what you're saying, and I'm fully on board with what you're saying about Checo there. There just seems to be endless question marks, and his race pace was incredible, very worthy of driver of the day. But like you said about Alex probably falling off his chair laughing, my head was in my hands when he went out in Q2. I thought, oh my God, we've had Gasly, we've had Albon, and now Checo's having these issues. What is wrong with that Red Bull second seat? But on the Sunday, he really did prove that wrong. And I think he'll be better than Albon. He'll be better than Gasly. Very different stages of their career. Don't get me wrong, but I think this is the man they have been looking for. But another question mark that kind of comes into play with Checo is AlphaTauri's new driver, Yuki Tsunoda. A couple of years ago, when he joined Formula 2, thought it was a bit of a mistake. I thought he struggled in Formula 3, got a couple of wins at the end of the season, but I thought that this is rushing him through too early. I was so wrong. I am so happy I was so wrong, because he was mega in F2 last year, and his first race of the season last weekend was bonkers. That was an incredible rookie performance, even very close to getting through to Q3 on the medium tyres in your first weekend. And whilst other rookies were making mistakes, he was bossing it. Passing Fernando Alonso like it was no one's business. Passing Danny, I don't think he quite got to the McLarens, but battling with the Ferraris, the Aston Martins. Just a really impressive weekend. And whilst I don't think he's going to be causing Checo any problems in the near future, in a couple of years down the line, I think he may very well be knocking on the door. It's early days, but I know I was super impressed with Yuki. How did you feel about his first race?
I mean, I was in the same boat as you, but still in Formula 2. I was looking through his season and I thought, I feel like Yuki could do with another year, because he's had some strong performances, but he's made some mistakes as well. I think taking out Callum Ilott in Spa was one. He had a few other collisions and little silly moments where he got too frustrated over the course of the year. But again, like you, I was completely proved wrong. He got to Formula 1 and I was amazed. And kudos to AlphaTauri as well, because that car this year is rapid. Whatever they've done to it, obviously there's been some significant changes around the front end, but I think they've got some parts from Red Bull as well, which have probably done quite a lot. But Gasly was up there as well, before he decided to rear end Ricciardo on the first few laps. He was doing really well. And I think we've got Imola next, is where Danny Kvyat almost scored a podium last year. AlphaTauri had a strong car there last year. They've done a lot of testing around that circuit again. Yuki's had experience. I think they're going to be even quicker. And I'll put a bold prediction out here. I think we could see an AlphaTauri pass a Mercedes at Imola. I'm just saying. I know that's bold.
Oh my!
And I know that sounds dumb, and people are going to slate me in the comments for that. But Mercedes are worried. Bottas is Bottas. Let's be honest. I think if AlphaTauri carry this pace going, it could take it would be one of those sort of things where after a safety car, an AlphaTauri will get ahead and then probably get passed again. But I think we will see an AlphaTauri pass a Mercedes at some point. Very bold, but I'm going to put it in there. But back to Yuki, I am worried though. I am very worried, because I go back to 2014 and this little guy called Danny Kvyat comes into the sport. Very similar kind of buzz and hype around him. Very young guy, very quick guy, has been, thrown straight through the junior categories. I don't even think he did GP2. I might be wrong in that. I think he went straight up from. I think he did from GP3 or F3, wherever he was racing, and he had a very strong early season in Toro Rosso. Got the promotion when Vettel decided to go to Ferrari. And then obviously we saw what happened. He actually had a really strong season in 2015 as well, it should be said. He beat Ricciardo. But then, the messiah of Max Verstappen came along and Red Bull, shafted Danny aside. And that curtailed his career. So the exact same thing happened with Pierre Gasly. So the exact same thing happened to Alex Albon, although I never really rated him in the first place. In fact, Kvyat was quicker than Albon in their time at Toro Rosso. But I really hope they do not do the same thing with Yuki Tsunoda. I think it was an Autosport article that came out the other day saying we're not going to, I forget what the word was. They called him a diamond in the rough, which I think is a really good description of Yuki. He's come out of nowhere, and Japan is not known for getting drivers into Formula 1. And yet there is some incredible talent out there, and he's managed to work his way in. And he has some proper potential, but he needs 2 years in AlphaTauri. Even if it feels like we're stunting his growth a little bit towards the end of that second year, I'd rather have that, and then he steps up into the main team for 2023 and delivers, rather than we see a repeat of Gasly or a repeat of Albon. Because it's pressure at Red Bull. I think that's one thing that Perez dealt with really well. He had a setback in qualifying, but he came back in the race. And that's not what we were seeing with Albon. If Albon had a bad start to a weekend, that would carry through him. And that's partly down to his experience. Perez, he's got that experience now and he can overcome that. Tsunoda hasn't got that experience yet. So even if we get to the end of 2021 and the kid is rapid, get Perez in for another year, because that's not a bad option at all. Perez is a solid driver in that second seat, and he will be for another year. And it would also feel quite harsh, I think, to ditch Perez after 1 year for Tsunoda, and gives them just that extra piece of time. They've now got that space to breathe. It also lets them bring up a few other drivers as well, and assess who is next in that line. Obviously, you've got Vips, you've got Lawson, you've got Deruvala, you've got plenty of drivers working their way up as well. But they've just got to be really, really careful, because Yuki, arguably, I think, is the best Red Bull rookie since Verstappen, to work his way up. And they could ruin it. They really could ruin it. So I just hope they don't.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the big thing Red Bull need now is a period of stability. And I love the fact you've mentioned Danny Kvyat coming in, because I remember at the time just being so confused why they didn't go with Jean-Eric Vergne. Because I think Vergne over the season did have the edge. He very similar story in the end of 2018 into 2019. Why did they go with Gasly over Carlos Sainz? Because Sainz was solid at Renault. Gasly had a year against Brendan Hartley, and nothing against Brendan Hartley. He wasn't the greatest of Formula One drivers in that year. Why not? Why will they keep putting these drivers that have experience, that are going to be solid, and going for the risk? I know Max Verstappen was an incredible driver in 2015, deserved that move up in 2016. But the ripple effect that's had over the last few years of not being able to find a second driver, now Daniel Ricciardo's moved on. Not saying he's a second driver, comments, do not come at me for that one. but just finding that stability within the team is something, and I think you picked up on there, that I think Perez is going to bring to that team. And I hope they don't rush Tsunoda. With Gasly alongside, I'm not too sure about the future of him, because like you say, Vips looks so quick. Lawson had a great start to F2, and Deruvala in his second year is doing really well as well. But just to kindly wrap up AlphaTauri, because I'm not letting you get away with this, an AlphaTauri get in front of a Mercedes, that's bold. but you've got me thinking, do you think they could get third in the Constructors this year? Which sounds nuts for the Red Bull second team to get third. But they generally look so quick. Gasly had his moment, like you mentioned. And if Tsunoda can keep building, surely they're in the fight.
I'm going to say no. And I've got my reasoning for that is I feel like AlphaTauri are going to be this year's Haas of 2018.
Oh, don't say that. Don't say that.
I know this will probably bring you some bad Grosjean flashbacks.
Already,
I'm sorry. But I'm thinking, it was 2018, where they came out the gates absolutely rapid in the straight. They're running P4, P5 in the race. Then we obviously know what happened. I think that's going to be that's going to be AlphaTauri this year. They'll start the year strong, but they won't be able to keep up that pace. Bear in mind, they're going against the likes of McLaren, who are expanding their operations. You've got our Aston Martin, who have started slow, but they are having a massive expansion to their factory as well. I don't think AlphaTauri have the facilities to build that up. And really, I don't see the point of AlphaTauri fighting this. They could be that team that says, let's get the most that we can out of these regulations. But that doesn't make sense to me. I'd say switch focus early onto the 2021 car. You can get some solid points. Maybe I see AlphaTauri slipping back to 5th or 6th in the end. Maybe even 7th, because I think what they're going to do is they're going to consolidate some points early, maybe do some big developments at the start of the year, and then immediately switch on to 2022 and focus on those new regulations. I think that's going to be one of the biggest talking points this year, when a team's going to make that switch. I mean, teams already are working on these cars, but when are they going to make the full switch and stop developing the 2021 machines? And really, I think AlphaTauri could be one of the big benefactors if they switch now, because you're going to have the likes of Alpine and Aston switching very, very early. And they've got to watch out that they don't fall back. I mean, look at the likes of, Ferrari, for instance. Or even though Red Bull's actually an even better option. 2014, they, all through the end of the V8 era, they focused hard on those, and Renault as well focused hard on their V8 engines, didn't put as much focus onto the V6s like Mercedes did. In fact, Mercedes started work on the V6 all the way back in 2010, 4 years before the they were due to be introduced into Formula One. Renault started a lot later, really maximised the end of that era. And we saw what happened to Red Bull. It took them years. In fact, this is the first year that they've really been able to properly fight all season long. And that's taken, 6-7 years? You don't want to do that, especially moving to such a radical regulation change that is 2022.
Yeah, I'm fully on board with that as well. And I think you could argue Renault only last year caught up with their power unit. So
yeah,
I'm with you. I was trying to push you to go even bolder, saying AlphaTauri third. So I'm glad you didn't fall for that, because I know that's racking around in my brain now. But I think you're right. I think they've got a driver pairing capable of doing it, and I think the car they have now, as you say, if they kept developing that through this year, they would be in the fight. But I agree with you. I think it's sensible to start, especially considering they're a junior team for Red Bull. It's probably best to start putting those people, those minds onto 22 a little bit earlier. And I think you'll see the likes of Williams, Haas especially, that they've already started, haven't they? Crikey.
Haas aren't going to be developing their car whatsoever.
Yeah.
Well, the only development they're going to be doing is rebuilding it every time Mazepin bins it in the wall. But, you know.
Yeah. So I'm fully on board with that. But as we're about the halfway stage now, mate, I want to do some quiz. I want to do some quizzing. And this is going to be very much a trial for the rest of the season. So if this goes well, happy days. If it doesn't, you're going to be the only contestant, and you'll win the whole thing.
That's fine. I'll take it. What's the award at the end? Are we going to get a trophy?
I hadn't thought about that. I'm sure we can. I'm sure we can sort something. So you want to win this? This is the visor down quiz, and the aim of the game is to name the correct helmet that shows up on screen. I want to know the driver, and I want to know the season. I'll show you 5 helmets, very, very simple, ranging from 1950 to 2020.
Oh,
a bit of a mix. Don't worry, they're not too hard, because I wanted to make sure I knew which ones they were as well, so I didn't look silly. And then there will be one final helmet, helmet number 6, which is a special helmet from 2020, and instead of telling me the year, I want to know the race.
Okay.
So 12 points up for grabs. There will be a scoreboard, but as you are contestant number 1, you will be first, William. So happy days for you. So I will send over helmet number 1 now. There you go. Hopefully that pops through. Hopefully that's popped up for everyone on screen.
Well, that's a nice simple. Okay, that's kind of put my mind at ease.
Yeah.
That's obviously Lewis Hamilton 2020.
I can tell you, Will, you are correct. That is
okay. If I got that one wrong, I'd be a little bit worried at that stage.
Well done. And that is, of course, you won't be able to see this, Will, but that is our sponsor for today, Pit Lane Prints, the Lewis Hamilton print in the top left-hand corner for you all. So thank you for sponsoring the video. But helmet number 2, we're going back a little bit. I think you should be able to get this one.
Yeah, that is judged by the overalls as well. David Coulthard for his last race at Red Bull for 2008.
Oh, very, very well done, my friend. 4 out of 4 so far. Well done. Okay, now we're starting to get a little bit more tricky. Whose helmet is this one?
That, judging by the sponsors, it's a Sauber driver from 2015 or 16. I'm going to say Felipe Nasr, because I think Banco de Brazil was his sponsor, and I can't see Brazil sponsoring Ericsson. But is it 15 or 16 now is the tough one. I'm going to say 16, but I'm not 100% certain.
Oh, that kills me. That kills me.
It was 15, wasn't it?
It was 15. Yeah,
no!
That is bang on the money. Well done for getting that one. I thought that one would be a little bit more tricky. So, 5 out of 6. That's not too bad. Next up, I will be very surprised if you get this one.
The driver's Elio De Angelis. I can tell you that much.
I'll give you a point for that already, because that's... I mean, you may have got that because the name's on the helmet.
Yeah, it does say it on the helmet.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you would fall for that.
Yeah, this is when you say, well, actually, no, this was a tribute helmet by, the year, let's say 19, when did he race? It was 80s, wasn't it? So let's go 1981.
Oh, good
Was
effort.
it 1980?
Not quite, not 84.
No.
84,
okay.
That's an impressive run, mate. That's not bad at all. So 2 points dropped so far, 6 out of 8. Your final normal helmet for this round is this one?
So, judging by the sponsorship, it's a Sauber driver from early 90s? No, late 90s, early 2000s when they had the Red Bull sponsorship. Oh, the driver's going to be a tough one. I'll guess the year, and I'll say 2003? No, hang on, 2001.
I'll tell you now, you've got a point. That is
it 2001?
It is 2001.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, right. So who were the drivers? Okay, Kimi Raikkonen was the first one, but that doesn't look like Raikkonen's helmet. So who was their other driver? And it was a rookie, because he made the say. No, I'm sure it was a rookie, but I might be wrong. I really don't. I can't remember the other driver. I'm going to say Kimi Raikkonen. I know it's wrong, but it was his teammate. I imagine.
Well, I'm afraid it's not Kimi Raikkonen.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
It's not his teammate either.
Oh, okay.
This is the Arrows.
Oh, it's the Arrows.
Jos Verstappen.
Fair enough. Okay.
But
of course, orange effort. Arrows. So it wasn't. Of course, yeah. Red Bull also sponsored Arrows, didn't they, at that time?
Yeah, that was a really good effort, mate.
Okay.
7 out of 10.
I'll take the 2001. I'm proud of that one at least.
Yeah, I'm very impressed. And your last one, the special helmet from 2020. All I need to know is the driver and the circuit. I can tell you now, you'll get the driver in an instant, but the circuit, maybe not so much.
So obviously Daniel Ricciardo.
Well done.
I mean, if I didn't, as a Daniel Rick fan, if I didn't get that, I think I would have just shut my channel down at that point. What race was it though? Part of me really wants to say Portimao for some really weird reason, but I don't know.
Are we going with Portimao?
Let's go with my instinct. Portimao.
I'm afraid it is wrong. It was Mugello, but that was a great effort, mate. 9 out of 12. Was it 9 out of 12? Or 8 out of 12? I've lost count already. It was
8 out of
12.
That's still okay.
Yeah, well done, mate. Well, you're top of the leaderboard. So congratulations on that. You are currently in the running for our imaginary prize that we have not yet come up with. So happy days on that one. Thank you very much, mate, for being a great sport and getting involved. But before we go, there's a couple of things I want to wrap up. And first of all, a couple of weeks ago, I asked you for a bold prediction. And you told me Sebastian Vettel would win a race this year. I can tell you that last weekend was a bit of a stinker for old Sebastian Vettel.
I don't know what you're on about. I thought it was a great race.
Wasn't ideal. Out in Q1, no points. Well, no points for the championship. 5 penalty points. What were your thoughts, mate? Because I'm totally lost with that first weekend. I would like to say it was a blip. It was a one-off. But I'm not sure.
I really want to say that. I want to say it's a one-off. I really do want to say it's a one-off. But Aston don't look quick. Or at least not as quick as McLaren, who've made obviously the biggest step up. The Merc engine probably helping with that. But Aston, I mean, I don't know whether you've heard. It's been a bit quiet. Ooh. But I think Otmar's been a bit vocal about his views on the rakes and what the new regulations done to the rakes. I don't know whether you've heard that. It was only said a couple of times over the course of the weekend.
1 or 2.
Only 1 or 2. Not like every time the cameras pan to Otmar, it's like rakes. You know, there's the rakes. You know, no. But it's so tough. Like, I mean, I literally took the mick out of it in my latest video saying that because I make a prediction about Vettel every year. I said he was going to win the championship in 2020, go out on a high with Ferrari. That aged about as well as Nikita Mazepin's career, didn't it? I mean, it's not going. I should just stop talking about Sebastian Vettel. I hope it's a blip. I think we will still see highs from him this season, but that high is going to be maybe a P5 finish or a good top 10 score. I don't see it going any higher than that. Now I've said that, he'll go and win Imola, but you know it's yeah. He's got 2 years at Aston, so he's got time. But we've got to remember it is a new car. We saw Danny Rick as well, struggling to get the hang of that McLaren, still slightly off Norris. Sainz as well had a few moments with the Ferrari. We've got to take that into account as well. I am just making excuses at this point, but
no, it's good.
I'm trying. I'm really trying. But yeah, we'll see what Seb does. He's got 2 years, presumably alongside Stroll as well, so he's going to have that kind of peace of mind that his career isn't on the line per se. But yeah, it's just it's a tough one.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't hide the fact I was massively surprised at Aston's performance. Like you mentioned, Otmar wasn't shy in his opinions about the changes in regulations this year, but I was very surprised at their pace overall at just for the entire weekend, really. Lance is Lance, and I think you're never quite sure what he's going to be able to do over a weekend. And if there's wet conditions, he probably will go snatch a podium. That's kind of what he does in wet conditions for some strange reason.
Yeah.
And Seb, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I want to give him a bit of time, but I think you kind of mentioned it there in the sense that I feel he's in the right place for 2022. Because Ferrari, it was always going to be Charles Leclerc focused, no doubt. I remember a couple of years ago, everyone had this idea that Seb was going to go to Mercedes. I don't think that's ever going to happen now, but I think with Aston, he's at a team that obviously have massive aspirations. And you mentioned this right at the beginning. They're going through a huge transition, not just with their driver lineup and the team, but a brand new factory, a brand new air and wind tunnel. There's so much going on with that team, and it all seems to be moving in the right direction. So, hey, maybe it's my turn to go bold. He could be a big surprise driver next year. He could be someone that could really gel with the new regulations. And who's to say he's not in the fight for the World Championship? Yeah, that's extreme. But I think that would...
You're going to go at me for saying an AlphaTauri would pass a Mercedes, but I'm sorry. Nikita Mazepin is more likely to spin his way to victory, mate. I'm sorry. Roman Grosjean's more likely to return than that. I'm sorry, pal.
Well, I know Grosjean's returning. Don't worry, that's going to happen. That's okay. Cool. But
when Mazepin gets his race ban, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose I'll just kind of end up on this. Do you think Aston will be one of the first teams, excluding Haas, because we know they already have shifted to 22, but in that midfield, considering how things were last weekend and how they're not very happy about how things are going to go for the rest of the season, do you think they could be an early team to move on to next year?
I think they've got to. With the way the regulations are and the homologation rules have come in due to the thing we can't talk about because of monetization, that things begin with C. I'd say the C word, but there's two. You've got that, and there's Mazepin. Yeah. But anyway, where was I? Yeah. So due to those rules, you can't just change the high rate design, and even in a normal season, if a car, you'd need a full-on B-spec car to switch from a high rate to a low rate design. That's too much money and too much time that Aston can afford to put into this for one season. The regulations are definitely coming into effect for 2022. It doesn't make sense to carry on with that. To switch, to try and switch to a low rate concept. They can't even do it anyway because of the rules. So Aston are kind of stuck in that position where they can't. They're in a situation where they can't really do anything about it. So for me, it's that the smart choice is to switch focus to next year. I know they were talking about this year as one which was going to be a turning point for them. Let's also remember that car is based off of the Mercedes, and I've said this time and time again, and we're starting to see it now. Actually, is they based their 2020 car off of a design that had already been largely optimized by one of the best teams the sport has ever seen. You're not going to be able to find much more pace out of that before you start changing the concepts around. And then they were stung even more by the fact that they've got to keep a lot of these concepts stable between 2020 and 2021. So I was expecting them, I said this at the start of last year, that I'd expect them to fall off the pace by the end of 2020. That didn't happen, but now we're starting to see it as other cars can just develop their designs further because they're not at that point where they're fully optimized, if that makes sense. We've seen Mercedes switch and do some different things as well into 2021 and bring out a completely new car. So, yeah, for me, Aston have got to just bite the bullet, suck up this season, give it away to the likes of McLaren. It's not that they're going to be suffering for money anymore. Lawrence Stroll is basically just vomiting cash at that team. So they're not going to worry about any sort of financial troubles like they might have had to do when they were Force India back in 2017, 2018. So really just suck this year up. They've got a lot of stability going into 2022 anyway. Same driver lineup, presumably same staff. A few changes going on obviously with the factory as we've said. But yeah, they've got to switch focus basically fairly soon.
Yeah, and they're definitely in safe hands, aren't they? I mean, the driver lineup, they'll always be Lance Stroll, and even if Seb doesn't have a great year, he's still a 4-time world champion, and that's going to be an attractive team for anyone. And even if Seb did walk away, even a George Russell may consider going there for a season. Pierre Gasly's out of his seat. There's always going to be people that want to go there, isn't there?
100%. I mean, Sebastian Vettel may not be able to tell what a straight line is, given what happened with Ocon, but he still has that experience. He's seen Ferrari build themselves up and then break themselves down again. He's seen Red Bull build themselves up. He has that experience in how to bring a team in, and that's really why they chucked Checo out in the first place. I don't really think they went for it in terms of how much pace he's bringing now. All they needed from him was that experience, and I think they're going to take that over the 2 years, and then they'll be done with him. He'll probably be done with Formula 1 at that point as well. I'm just being very careful what I say about Seb, because I know the Twitter stands have been on him recently. They've been really supporting their boys, so I'm going to kind of take it easy. But yeah, Seb's got the experience. He's going to give that. That's the reason I think he's at Aston Martin. And yeah, I think sadly the Seb of old is gone. I hate to say it, but I think that is the situation we're now facing.
Oh, that hurts, man.
It does. It hurts me as well. As someone who I despise. I was a Webber fan growing up, so I despised Seb up until he went to Ferrari, and then when that kind of cocky side of him, and he kind of got a bit. I think he was humbled in his experience at Ferrari a lot. And I grew to like him a lot more. And he's one of my favourite drivers on the grid now. But yeah, I hate to say it, but I think the Seb, since someone said this to me, but since Germany 2018, he's not been himself. And actually, that makes a lot of sense. That was the start of Spinala's. And then we had 2019 when Leclerc came in and rattled him a little bit. And then 2020 was 2020. And that's continued into this year. So yeah, I hate to say it, but that's the situation we find ourselves in.
Yeah, well, I don't want to leave on a somber note. I mean,
I know we've had so much fun here, but I'm sorry, guys.
No, that's cool. Well, before we do leave, I've got to ask you something, because keeping with the theme of this whole podcast and our helmet focus, a big thing I wanted to start was our Wall of Fame, and people on screen now will see it. Audio listeners, apologies, you'll just have to listen to the Wall of Fame. And every time we have a new guest on, I want to know their favourite helmet design, and we'll add it to the Wall of Fame. Let me know yours in the comment section down below. But Will, I've put mine up, and I've actually gone with Sebastian Vettel from last year, funnily enough. I think his design is so iconic. I just picked last year's because any of his ones at Ferrari were so cool. I'm not as big a fan as the pink one. So
yeah, agreed.
It's not terrible, but something iconic about that German one. But I want to know yours, fella. Where are we going with this?
I'm going to stick with my Webber theme. And again, growing up, I was a Webber fan. From when I started watching football, as a child, I was always supporting Webber and Jaguar and Williams in Red Bull. So I'm going to go for his 2013, his kind of swan song season, with that Red Bull kind of branded helmet with the yellow on top. It just stood out from the blue, and I just remember the two races that come to mind. Firstly, I think it was 2012 Silverstone when he won that race, and the helmet was just so prominent. And then in his last race when he took it off, and he's just sat there, no helmet in the car. It's just iconic for me as a Webber fan. I don't tear up in Formula One much, but I came very close at that point. The 13-year-old me was distraught. I remember. So, I'm going to go for the Webber 2013 helmet.
Well, I can tell you now, I didn't expect that coming into the first episode, but that is an awesome way to start our Wall of Fame, our Helmet Hall of Fame. Thank you very much, Will, for joining me on today's episode. Thank you all very much at home for watching, for listening. This is all very new to me, the world of podcasting, so feedback in the comments would be massively appreciated, but please don't worry if not. A like, a dislike helps me really understand if you're enjoying or if you're not. Thank you all so much for watching. Pit Lane Print is in the description down below. Links to Will's channels are in the description down below, and we'll see you next time on the Racing Reviews podcast.